Good day, I'm Administrator Adam Southgate, and today's lecture will be covering the Eldritch spheres Arsylwyr and Di-Gwsg. Imagine for me, if you will, a world in which ants have a mind capable of both recognizing their own existence and that of the existence of others. They create a society, wage wars fueled by hatred, and question their own existence. Now, what do you think would happen if those ants witnessed a human being casually step over their whole world, everything they have ever or will ever experience deemed too small to even take note of by a being so far beyond them? And how would those creatures react if they were taken notice of and even observed by an eye that to them would seem like an entire ocean? This is what today's entity confronts us with, but before I get ahead of myself, I'd like to mention the Order's Discord to help keep our hunters organized. It's broken up into different roles based on rank and which earth you belong to, if any. Along with this, we conduct our contracts through this system, so I hope to see you all there. Now, onto our hunters update. Firstly, the conclusion of the Pembroke Necromancer contract. The contract itself was rather typical, a series of bodies found around the town with select pieces of their anatomy missing. What took this into the more unusual, however, was the larger events taking place around Wales. Alan Thorne's plan to ascend to godhood hinges on the retrieval of a specific Path of Life artifact that we at the time were in the dark about, and so rather than a simple elimination, the Path of Life Necromancer needed to be captured alive. The Hardy Boys, along with Alex Beauchard, took on the contract, arriving in the town to meet with the Order's Mason contact. After rather a lot of running around checking over the recovered bodies and observing a privately owned CCTV system, the team discovered that the perpetrator was in fact the Mason contact who had been misguidedly attempting to save his son via necromantic means. After receiving medical care as he was shot during the contract, the necromancer was questioned on the desired subject regarding the artifact. Known as Mother's Blood, it takes the form of a shard of bone taken from an unknown rib. This bone piece constantly but steadily bleeds, and so is kept within a glass bottle that must be emptied periodically to stop the container from rupturing. From what we've been told, the blood itself is what causes the desired effect of making any that it touches wholeheartedly agree with anything asked of them, though our researchers believe that one with enough knowledge could modify it to function differently. Our captured necromancer believes that the Mother's Blood is kept upon the Isle of Man beneath the earth within a cave that links to the sea, though this is through the extrapolation of legend. As an aside, it also turns out his master is also looking for the artifact, which is how he himself learned of it, and surprisingly for much of the same reasons as ourselves, to keep it out of the hands of Alan Thorne. Secondly, with this information revealed to us, we now need to make our own play to claim the artifact for ourselves and safeguard it against Alan Thorne until we are able to find a way to destroy it. Using subsurface sound pulse mapping that was previously conducted by a civilian archaeology team, we have pinpointed only 2 viable locations that fit the description given to us by our necromancer, and both are connected by a series of tunnels. We would like to send a team to the Isle, with of course the permission of the local government, to enter the tunnel network and if there secure the artifact. I do not wish to make this task sound overly simple, however, as while the Path of Life do not make undead or monstrosities, they are quite adept at the creation of traps, both mundane and otherwise, and while the mundane ones would have decayed by this time, the anomalous ones will not have. Along with this, there is a good chance that Alan Thorne's necromancers will already be at the site if they haven't already claimed the artifact. We suggest a policy of avoidance in their case, unless they have already claimed the item, in which case every method must be used to stop them leaving with it. As well as these dangers, there is also the matter of our captured necromancer's master, who thankfully does not have access to the same mapping data as ourselves, but does have a head start over us. They will most likely be an active danger during the contract that will need to be watched for, as we are unaware of what they actually look like. If they have yet to find the entrance to the underground, then there is a good chance they will attempt to follow yourselves beneath the earth and strike when you are at your weakest, so you will need to be on your guard. We require a team of at least 3 for this contract of journeyman rank or higher. Those interested can apply for the bounty through our Orders Discord via the Contracts tab. The Eldritch Sphere is one that is difficult to define, and everything I'm about to discuss is theoretical. There is a universe comparable to our own, though of a terrifying size, but this is only scratching the suggestion of a surface. You see, these beings within this first universe are so large that they cannot fit within our own. In fact, some anomalous mathematicians have postulated that our universe would be on the same scale as a single atom within theirs. Now, each denizen of this universe possesses within their own mind another universe, and again, these universes are still unfathomably larger than our own, and the beings which live within these universes also have universes within their own minds. This layering continues into infinitum, but paradoxically there is also a beginning, the Eldritch universe itself, which we just discussed, and an end, beings incapable of maintaining their own universes within their minds. What's important for today's subject, however, is how these beings see our world and our own greater universe. The greater beings, those of the upper layers, are basically incapable of even perceiving our universe, as it is too small for their notice in the most literal sense, while the lesser beings appear almost obsessed, interfering in esoteric ways all their own. But what of those beings between these two extremes, those not so large that they cannot see us, but not so small that they are drawn into us? Beings that, for lack of a better term, enjoy simply observing our world, but have no interest or intent when it comes to interacting with us, but due to their nature cause untold harm simply by opening their eye towards us. One result of this is the Di-Gwsg. It begins with a sigil. A mark on our sphere that etches itself into our reality. Upon objects ancient and new, the rune appears, however aged and worn, to exactly match that it is upon, as if it was always there. We never know when or where these marks will appear, and so study of their arrival is next to impossible. Even in the rare cases when CCTV should have accidentally captured their appearance, instead what we find is that after the sigil's emergence, all previous footage shows it as if it was always there, including within photographs and even paintings. For those unlucky enough to view the sigil without the protection of an MMB or the like, all that awaits them is a slow, grinding descent into insanity and eventually death if they're lucky. Those who become Di-Gwsg go through 3 distinct stages, which we will cover one by one. Stage 1. It begins seconds after the first viewing of the mark, a sudden and severe migraine with the pain focused at the back of the eyes. However, like any similar mundane affliction, this will pass. It will be some weeks before the next symptom is apparent, but as time passes it becomes more and more obvious as the victim finds that they are getting less and less sleep. This is not caused by pain or discomfort, simply an inability to quiet the mind enough to sleep, and in this early stage can be combated by several sleep aids and medications. As time moves forward, however, this insomnia becomes far more detrimental, with the victim only succeeding in fitful minutes of sleep with heavy medication, but even this will soon be robbed from them. You see, as time passes, the brain stem, the part of the brain responsible for sending the signal to sleep to the rest of the brain, simply becomes unable to send said signal, making sleep, even when heavily sedated, impossible. This causes a myriad of different detrimental physical symptoms. However, the most important for this discussion is the fact that the brain is unable to maintain and clean itself, as this is done during sleep. Over the next hellish 6 months, the victim will degrade mentally, first experiencing visual and auditory hallucinations, then suffering Alzheimer's-like symptoms, and finally falling into a wakeful catatonic state. The victim literally left unresponsive and unmoving, but still with their eyes open, staring blankly at the world. Now, for around 70% of victims, this is where the story ends, their body finally succumbing to the physiological stresses. However, for the remaining 30%, they enter the second stage. Stage 2. This begins with the previously immobile victim suddenly becoming animate once again. However, the person that they once were being well and truly lost. Instead, what remains is a wild being whose first impulse is to mutilate themselves, tearing away their eyelids and biting off their own lips. They are hyper-aggressive to any within their eyeline, with the only exception being those who have already seen the sigil. This aggression is rather unique, however, as they do not attempt to rip apart those they attack. Instead, they aim to grip the head of this other person, pulling them towards their eyes so that they are looking directly into one another. This puzzled researchers for some time, especially since those who looked into the eyes of a Di-Gwsg entered stage 1, until, with the advancements of ophthalmology, we found out why. Scarred into the retina of each Di-Gwsg at any stage is the same sigil that first infected them. Back to the matter at hand, stage 2 Di-Gwsg are very animal-like in their behaviours, but still are unable to sleep, though seem to no longer require it to live. It's as if all of what they were has been completely lost, leaving only that is needed for their immediate survival, but rather frighteningly, they are very capable of learning. Stage 3. Thanks to our effort, stage 3 Di-Gwsg are exceptionally rare, but must be discussed due to the danger they pose. It is less of a dramatic change as exists between the first and second stages, and rather is a slow one, similar to that of a baby becoming a child. You see, as stage 2 exists, they learn, accumulating knowledge and eventually reaching a tipping point into a full, horrifying self-awareness. Again, the original person is lost by this point. As an analogy, think of the human brain as hardware and the mind as software. The original software has been completely deleted and replaced by this new mind that has slowly grown. Depending on their proximity to humanity, they will either acquire the local language or create their own, and all have an instinctual belief in what the Order has named Arsylwyr. This intrinsic faith, the cause of which is literally etched into their eyes, pushes them to spread it, but unlike stage 2, they have the presence of mind to not only force others to look into their eyes, but also to create new examples of the sigil, then placing them within populated areas, making them one of the most dangerous potential threats out there. We have, through capturing stage 2 Di-Gwsg and allowing them to progress to stage 3 in captivity, learned at least their interpretation of what is happening. After keeping 13 Di-Gwsg within a large, mostly sealed enclosure for several years, then purging the environment, we were able to collect what they had created. We had purposefully exposed them to both the spoken form of English as well as the written form, so that we would be able to easily read what, if anything, they had created. What was discovered was fascinating. The original purpose of the experiment was to simply observe the subjects and the culture they developed, with only a dim hope that they would attempt writing. What the researchers first saw when entering the enclosure, all but 2 of the cameras having been destroyed early on, limiting the visual range of the observation before the purging, was that 2 of the 4 large walls were covered in the written word. It's interesting to note here that the stage 3 Di-Gwsg only wrote on the walls which were visible from the cameras they had destroyed, implying that on some level they knew that they could see. While there was far too much to go through here, I will do my best to summarize the general idea. Arsylwyr, the Order's name as the Di-Gwsg name for the being was paragraphs long, is the eternal watcher locked in apathy. A being without a concept of suffering or joy that observes our world through their mark. It does not watch out of interest, but rather because that's what it does, its singular purpose. The Di-Gwsg believed that their marking was accidental and exposed them to a fraction of the lack of need experienced by Arsylwyr, taking away their need for sleep and their memory of such. They are attempting, by spreading the sigil, to gain more gifts from Arsylwyr so that other causes of suffering will be removed and they can be more like their god. However, this is only this one group's interpretation of what is happening to them, as again, Arsylwyr is an eldritch being and far beyond our comprehension. From what we at least theorize of the Eldritch sphere, it is equally likely that Arsylwyr, while yes, observing our sphere, is doing so as one would look at bacteria through a microscope. However, due to the vast differences between the length of our lives and its, what would only be a momentary glance for it is millennia for us, so even if it cared, it most likely would be unable to even notice their attempts. But how does one deal with Arsylwyr and Di-Gwsg? Well, first, as Arsylwyr is an eldritch entity not within our sphere, there is not anything we can directly do against it. However, the sigils are another matter. We become aware of their presence either through them being picked up with CCTV footage, a dedicated AI constantly searching through the countless videos for them, or due to a collection of people suddenly suffering insomnia. Once located, it is a simple matter of approaching them with an MMB equipped to shield yourself, then simply breaking the sign, which can be done with mundane tools. For the Di-Gwsg, it is somewhat more complicated. For Stage 1 individuals, you will need to inspect the backs of their eyes using an ophthalmoscope to confirm the existence of the sigil, again, while using an MMB. If present, you will need to take the affected person into custody, where we will then take them off your hands to be euthanized. For Stage 2, things become more difficult, as while the Di-Gwsg will instinctually know they cannot infect you while you have an MMB, they will also know that you mean them harm. Their first reaction will be to escape the area, something that cannot be allowed to happen. Once it becomes clear that escape isn't possible, they will attack with reckless abandon, though fundamentally their bodies are still human, and so, with you being armed, there should not be too much trouble. For Stage 3, on the rare occasion when one is able to develop to this point outside of Order custody, speed is essential. Their one and only goal will be to spread the mark through any means necessary, one infamous example being when a Di-Gwsg attempted to leap into the camera feed of a live news broadcast after carving the sigil into their own chest, thankfully the camera being shot just in time to foil the attempt. This one was acting alone and they nearly infected millions. I bring this up to try and impress upon you the seriousness of the situation. Stage 3 Di-Gwsg are as intelligent as ourselves, with a single-minded focus, and as such must not be underestimated. If you ever find yourself hunting one, or God forbid multiple, your only priority is to eliminate them through any means necessary. It is one of the very few examples of a time when civilian casualties are deemed completely acceptable. While yes, the Arsylwyr is disturbing, an eldritch being observing us for some unknown reason, I find the Di-Gwsg far more horrifying. Starting with the slow sleep deprivation and eventually becoming a single-minded drive to do the same to others, it is an unsettling example of how the spheres can twist us against ourselves. Without the contagious effect, well, yes, this would still be unpleasant, they would be far less dangerous, but since they have it, they are one of the few end-of-the-world scenarios. But that will be all for today. Please like, comment, and subscribe. With Arthur's might and Merlin's wisdom. Thank you.